Good evening. We begin tonight with breaking news. You'll only see it here. Christine Blasey Ford, the woman accusing Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh of sexually assaulting her, wants the FBI to investigate her allegations before talking to the Senate Judiciary Committee about it. We know this because 360 has exclusively obtained a letter that her attorneys have just moments ago sent to Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley. It lays out in stark terms the price she says that she and her family are already paying. Chairman Grassley wants her to appear next Monday before the committee. Republicans want to speed the nomination along. Democrats want to go slow. President Trump says Judge Kavanaugh doesn't deserve this, but until now, we did not know what Dr. Ford wants. Tonight, we do, reading now from the letter to Chairman Grassley that we've just received. As you know, earlier this summer, Dr. Ford sought to tell her story in confidence so that lawmakers would have a fuller understanding of Brett Kavanaugh's character and history. Only after the details of her experience were leaked did Dr. Ford make the reluctant decision to come forward publicly. The letter continues, saying, quote, "In the 36 hours since her name became public, Dr. Ford has received a stunning amount of support from her community and from fellow citizens across our country. At the same time, however, the letter goes on saying, quote, her worst fears have materialized. She's been the target of vicious harassment and even death threats. As a result of these kind of threats, her family was forced to relocate out of their home. Her email has been hacked, and she's been impersonated online." The letter then says this to Chairman Grassley, quoting again, "While Dr. Ford's life was being turned upside down, you and your staff scheduled a public hearing for her to testify at the same table as Judge Kavanaugh in front of 24 U.S. senators on national television to relive this traumatic and harrowing incident. The hearing was scheduled for 6 short days from today and would include interrogation by senators who appear to have made up their minds that she is mistaken and mixed up. While no sexual assault survivor should be subjected to such an ordeal, Dr. Ford wants to cooperate with the committee and with law enforcement officials." And this is the bottom line, and I'm quoting, "As the Judiciary Committee has recognized and done before, an FBI investigation of the incident should be the first step in addressing her allegations. A full investigation by law enforcement officials will ensure that the crucial facts and witnesses in this matter are assessed in a nonpartisan manner and that the committee is fully informed before conducting any hearings or making any decisions." Again, we've just gotten this letter, so has Senator Grassley. We're seeking reaction from him and other committee members, which will bring you if and when they come in during the hour. But first, one of the attorneys representing Christine Blasey Ford, Lisa Banks, joins me now. Thanks very much for being with us. Are you saying, I want to repeat this line, as the Judiciary Committee has recognized and done before, an FBI investigation of the incident should be the first step in addressing her allegations? Clearly, you want it to be the first step, and so does your client. Are you saying there has to be an investigation by the FBI or else Professor Ford will not testify?
What we're saying is that there should be an investigation because that's the right thing to do.
If there's not an investigation, would she appear on Monday?
She is prepared to cooperate with the committee and with any law enforcement investigation. And that has been her position, and it continues to be her position. So she will cooperate with the committee in whatever form that takes, and it remains to be seen. We have to talk with Senator Grassley's office and the other committee members to determine what form that will take.
You want to engage in conversations with Senator Grassley and others to actually figure out what happens between now and then and whether or not this takes place on Monday?
That's right. I mean, any talk of a hearing on Monday, frankly, is premature because she just came forward with these allegations 48 hours ago. And since that time, she has been dealing with hate mail, harassment, death threats. So she's been spending her time trying to figure out how to put her life back together, how to protect herself and her family. And there hasn't been an investigation, and these are serious allegations. So if the senators who have come forward and said they want to treat this seriously mean that, then they'll have an investigation of these allegations so that we all go into this more informed.
Now, the Senate does have investigators. It doesn't necessarily have to be the FBI. Would that be acceptable to you?
They have to be investigated. And again, those are things that we can discuss with Senator Grassley. Whether it's the FBI or other investigators, it should be impartial investigators who are nonpartisan.
If you engage in these conversations, if Senator Grassley's staff reaches out to you, as let's assume they would, and you have these conversations, and they continue to say point blank, look, this is not something the FBI is involved with, the FBI doesn't want to be involved in this, we are going to have these hearings on Monday, your client can either show up or not, would she show up?
She will talk with the committee. She's not prepared to talk with them at a hearing on Monday. This just came out 48 hours ago.
So point blank, if there's not an investigation between now and then, she would not appear on Monday in a public hearing?
No investigation is, and any legitimate investigation is going to happen between now and Monday. This is going to take some time. And what needs to happen is there shouldn't be a rush to a hearing here. There's no reason to do that.
So you're saying even if they say the FBI will investigate and begins an investigation, you're saying Monday there's no way your client would sit down in front of a hearing even if the FBI said, okay, we've looked into it? It's
premature to talk about a hearing on Monday, and I think people understand that because she has been dealing with the threats, the harassment, and the safety of her family, and that's what she's been focused on for the last 2 days, and will continue to be focused on that. And so asking her to come forward in 4 or 5 days and sit before the Judiciary Committee on national TV is not a fair process. And if they care about doing the right thing here and treating this seriously, as they have said, then they will do the right thing and they will properly investigate this, and she will work with them in that investigation and also to share her story with the committee, however that happens.
So, I mean, I don't want to put any words in your mouth, but I do just want to try to drill down on this and be as clear as possible. Even if the FBI agrees to investigate, you're saying a proper investigation can't be done before Monday, concluded before Monday. So, and even if the FBI says they will investigate, or if the chairman says the FBI won't investigate, you're saying your client will not sit down Monday for a public hearing?
There's no reason that we should have a public hearing on Monday, given what has occurred and when it has occurred. This is being rushed through, and it's too important to be rushed through. It's not a game. This is a serious situation.
Senator Cornyn said today that your client is not in a position to be making conditions here.
She's made her allegations known. She said that she will cooperate with the committee and with any investigation, and she remains willing to do that. We have reached out to Senator Grassley tonight and indicated that, and will continue to talk with him about ways in which we can have her communicate to the committee so that they have all the information they need, and to assist law enforcement, other investigators in following up leads on witnesses, facts, and anything else.
If the hearings on Monday were not public, would that make a difference in her willingness to sit down and appear before the committee?
No, again, it's premature. 48 hours ago, she came forward, and for the last 48 hours, she has been deflecting death threats and harassment and trying to care for her family and determine where they're going to sleep at night. And right now, she can't focus on having a hearing that hasn't been investigated and where nobody has talked to her.
There are Republicans who will say, well, look, this is a stalling tactic by Democrats, that Democrats had this information, had her allegations previously, and have delayed releasing them or delayed moving them forward.
The Democrats, Senator Feinstein in particular, respected her request for confidentiality initially. And that was the right thing to do, because victims of sexual assault have the ability to say whether and when those allegations should be made public. And so I have no problem with the way Senator Feinstein or the Democrats handled this. She came forward after these allegations were leaked, and her fears, unfortunately, have been realized, because since coming forward, her life has been turned upside down. And rushing forward into a hearing when she's under this much pressure isn't the way to do it. There's no reason to do it. It's not that there's a stalling tactic at play. She's more than willing to go forward and talk to the committee in whatever form that is, and to assist with law enforcement in their investigation.
Just not by Monday.
Nothing of substance and nothing legitimate can happen by Monday.
Would your client also like to have anybody else with information testify if there is a public hearing, whenever it takes place, also be called in to testify? The other people who may have witnessed it, may have been involved in any incident, may have known about it or been told about it in previous years.
Well, hearing is not a substitute for an investigation. So
it is under oath, though.
It is, but the investigation should occur before the hearing. The hearing should be as a result of the investigation. It shouldn't be a substitute for it. And so if there are other witnesses, absolutely. Those witnesses should be investigated. Their testimony should be heard. The committee should hear from them. All of the information should be gathered so that we can get to the truth here.
Given all that you said that she and her family have been going through, does your client regret at all coming forward?
I think that she felt strongly that this was the right thing to do. And she had to weigh the risks to herself and her family in doing so. And so I think she feels that it was her civic duty to come forward. That said, she's under a tremendous amount of pressure right now and is going to work to try to put her life back together and move forward. But even as she does that, she's willing to cooperate with the committee and with investigators.
So as we leave tonight, you are now, the ball's in the court of Senator Grassley. You want to hear from him or his staff?
Yes, we intend to talk to Senator Grassley, Senator Feinstein, anybody else on the committee, so that we can work out a process by which she can share her information and we can move this forward in a fair way.
Lisa Banks, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We just got this story. Chairman Grassley just got the letter. As we've been talking, CNN's Caitlin Collins has been working her sources at the White House. She joins us now. Caitlin, what are you learning?
Well, Anderson, we know that Brett Kavanaugh spent the day here mounting a defense and getting prepared and briefed by his confirmation team ahead of what was expected to be that public hearing on Monday. But now with this breaking news, that really seems to be thrown into doubt. Now, what we have learned from what Republicans have been saying all day is they've been getting more forceful in their defenses of Brett Kavanaugh. They seem unwilling to negotiate an alternative date for that hearing on Monday. We've heard from multiple of them, not just people on the Judiciary Committee, but even Senator Lindsey Graham and several others who say that on Monday that would be her opportunity to come forward to tell her story, and then they were going to move forward with a vote. So if they are unwilling to go forward with that testimony on Monday, there's a chance here, Anderson, a really good chance that they could move forward with this and have Judge Brett Kavanaugh confirmed as a Supreme Court justice, possibly by next week. Now, for the White House, you know, back here we've been discussing with President Trump, asking him if he thinks that there should be an FBI investigation into this. And for the past 2 days, he's roundly rejected that idea, saying that the FBI simply doesn't need to do so. Now, the White House's perspective here is that the FBI received this information from Senator Feinstein when she sent that allegation over to them. They added it to Brett Kavanaugh's file, and then they sent it to the White House counsel Don McGahn last Thursday, which is when they learned first of this allegation made against him. Now, they say that if they don't need an FBI investigation here because the Senate has its own investigators and that they could have their own staff look into this if they want to, because of course, if you go in front of Congress and you lie, that's just like lying to the FBI. So that is their position here. That's really unlikely to change, Anderson. It's not likely they're going to go along with this FBI investigation simply because this woman who has come forward with her allegation now decides that is what they would like before they move forward with any kind of testimony.
All right, Caitlin Collins, thanks very much. If you get a response from the White House about the breaking news, obviously we'll come back to you. I want to get perspective now from someone who was here when Anita Hill came forward in the confirmation fight over Clarence Thomas. Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton, a Democrat, is currently in her 14th term representing the District of Columbia. She was also the first woman to chair the Federal Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. Congresswoman Norton, thanks so much for being with us.
Of course, Anderson.
You heard from the attorney, Lisa Banks, for the professor. Is it reasonable that she not appear at this hearing on Monday until there's an investigation?
Well, Anderson, I'm not surprised, but actually I'm relieved that she still wants to testify. It's very important that she be able to testify. On the other hand, I don't see how you could throw her cold into a hearing. It's an almost cruel thing to do. With senators, very powerful senators there, no investigation against Kavanaugh, and then have what would amount to a swearing contest between an unknown woman and a candidate for the Supreme Court who has occupied the bench for decades.
It's an unfair situation, you're saying?
It's an unfair contest, and all she's trying to do, because in any case it's going to be very difficult for her, is to get what we in the House of Representatives call regular order. Do what you do before you have a hearing. There is no such thing, Anderson, as a hearing without the proper investigation. Why should this be any different? And let me give you a reason why this is not a slowdown tactic. First of all, the Senate's not gone. There's even the House is not gone. There is time to do this. The court already has a 5-4 Republican majority. So there's no reason to rush. And to rush in this way, if they do it this way, the hearing will be seen as a sham satisfying neither side.
But you know, there are many Republicans who see this and say, look, this seems like an 11th hour surprise put forward by Democrats. And
what's put forward by Democrats?
well, the accusations being made by their professor.
Then what they're saying is, remember how this got out in the first place. It was leaked. After it was leaked, she could have still said, I'm not going to come forward. But she said, all right, this is something I did not want to come out. It's come out, and I'm going to try to be as brave as I can and follow through. That's pretty brave in my judgment.
So I mean, it does seem like, from what Lisa Banks was saying, is that if there is, I mean, it seems like there's no way she is going to appear as of now on Monday before either there has to be an investigation, is what the professor is saying, and her attorney is saying. There has to be an investigation, and even if investigation begins immediately, Lisa Banks is saying there's not enough time for a thorough investigation to occur before Monday.
Yeah, I must say that her attorney would have been guilty of malpractice if she had not advised her client that she is putting herself into an untenable situation with no investigation, throwing herself into the Senate with no investigation, no preparation. And I think she advised her correctly.
I mean, obviously, you were involved in the Anita Hill investigation. Do you see, has a lot changed since then in terms of how this hearing would be run? Has a lot changed since then on the Hill?
It's changed in this way. I didn't, along with other members of the House, I didn't have to walk to the Senate this time to get a hearing. And we owe that to Anita Hill and to the Senate response that you can't ever let this go without a hearing. But actually, I think Anita Hill received more due process. For example, witnesses were allowed to testify. There were witnesses who said that Clarence Thomas had done the very same thing to them. And they put in affidavits. They were able to testify. You don't see anything like that being brought forward here. So if anything, this is a more serious allegation with not as much due process as Anita Hill had.
Do you think attitudes have changed since then? I mean, back then people were saying, look, they just don't get it. Do you think the senators who would be involved in this get it?
I think the country gets it, me too. I think this is the worst time, with elections coming up, to have this hearing and not have due process for a woman. And that is what is being put on the table. And that is what she is saying she will not abide. She's not saying she will not testify. And that's very important. They want her to say she will not testify. And then they will say, see, she was afraid to testify.
Do you think these hearings will go ahead anyway without her?
I think they're going to try to go ahead without her. And if they do, they're making a serious mistake, because then everyone is going to say, then if it was a sham to have a hearing with no investigation, you can't have a hearing with no witnesses. So I think they will be forced to rethink what they're going to do.
Congresswoman Norton, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much. Joining us now is CNN senior political analyst David Gergen, along with CNN legal analyst John Dean, as well as Laura Coates. David, now that we know that Ford will most likely not go testify to the Senate Judiciary Committee until an FBI investigation is conducted, whose move is it next? Where does this process go?
Well, I think it probably goes back to Senator Grassley and Senator Feinstein in the committee to decide what steps they're going to take next. But I must say, I think that from my point of view, the FBI background investigation is a routine for every major confirmation. The FBI goes out and collects information, and here's a new allegation. One would just assume that it would be right and proper and fair to Judge Kavanaugh, as well as to Professor Ford, if there were a thorough investigation that's impartial. Because for both sides who are convinced that they're right, You know, they should believe that the investigation is going to support them. In other words, if Judge Kavanaugh says it didn't happen and the investigation occurs and there's no real evidence that it did happen, he then is spared this cloud over his head, and that's what's fair to him. He deserves that, but so does she. So I would think that a routine FBI investigation could be done fairly quickly, in a matter of a couple of weeks, I would assume. So I don't think it's a big delay. And by the way, isn't this president the one who called for the FBI to investigate Anonymous and who was anonymous? And that had nothing to do with the crime, but he really thought strongly it ought to happen.
Laura, I mean, the president said the FBI doesn't want to be involved in this. I mean, is that?
I would find that shocking to know that the FBI was not interested in doing that which it does with every single judicial nomination to date. Their job is to conduct the background inquiry to figure out if this person has any skeletons in their closet. You saw this happen with Rob Porter about security clearances. You saw this happen with every single person who they are charged with actually trying to find out, is there any reason to believe this person is not qualified, and they hand that over. I think what the president's trying to do is essentially be dismissive because it ended up in a background file. But that doesn't mean that that actually is not relevant to the FBI or that they actually want to investigate it. The amount of time they have to do so, Anderson, is going to be crucial. This is a decades-old allegation. They need time to actually investigate. Now, whether they want to do it in about a week or less than that, they probably have zero interest in that, but not investigating entirely.
John, I mean, Senator Hatch has said that the hearing scheduled for Monday will proceed even if Ford doesn't show. What happens if the committee follows through on that and only Kavanaugh participates?
I think they hurt themselves because there's obviously going to be an empty chair. But I also think the arrangement, if I heard correctly in the letter, she thinks she's going to be sitting there with Judge Kavanaugh if she honors the invitation.
Well, she just said at the same table.
Yes,
didn't necessarily mean at the same
time. Well, even at the same table is pretty awkward. This is a woman who, while she's a professional, she's not trained as an attorney, she's not been in a courtroom or hearing rooms. This is all this is new territory for her. So there's an unfairness. Here's a judge who has been before murder boards, before his own courtroom. He's very used to this atmosphere. So there's a inequality in the way they're setting up. That's why I think they're very smart to ask for the investigation.